The red dust of Mars blew across the empty landscape as Lena Rourke wiped sweat from her brow and squinted into the orange haze. Her rover's engine gave a tired whine as it rolled over jagged rocks on the edge of Sector 12, a place most colonists avoided. It was abandoned, marked unstable by the Martian authorities after an old mining tunnel collapsed 2 years ago. But Lena wasn't the kind of person who followed rules without reason. She needed spare parts for the power generator back at her repair shop in Outpost 9, and she had a gut feeling that the old crash sites here might still hold something useful. She'd followed that gut feeling many times before, and while it often led her into trouble, it also saved her more than once. As she reached the crest of a broken ridge, the rover's sensors began to flicker. Static ran across the screen, and a low hum echoed from the scanner. Something was nearby, something big. Lena killed the engine and climbed out, her boots crunching softly on the dusty rock. The wind died down for a moment, and then she saw it. Half buried in the sand and rubble, a massive, curved structure jutted out from the earth like the bones of a giant metal beast. At first glance, it looked like the remains of a crashed satellite or some kind of experimental ship, but as she approached, the shape became clearer. It wasn't a ship. It was a body mechanical, yes, but shaped like a humanoid titan, its limbs splayed out as if it had fallen from the sky. Faded markings ran along the chest in a language she didn't recognize. The metal wasn't rusted or corroded, only scratched and scorched. It looked old, ancient even, but far too intact for something that had crashed ages ago. Curiosity overpowered caution as Lena stepped closer. Her fingers ran across the strange alloy. It was cold, smoother than any material she had worked with. She noticed faint pulses of blue light deep within the cracks of the armor. It was still alive, dormant, but not dead. She knew the stories. Everyone had heard of the Sentinels, giant alien war machines created by the Xanthian civilization to protect entire worlds. But the Xanthians vanished centuries ago, and their machines were believed to be lost or shut down forever. Yet here was one, half buried in Martian soil, humming softly like a sleeping giant. Lena's heart pounded. She should have called it in. There were protocols for discovering alien technology, but she also knew what would happen if she did. The government would send a team, lock down the site, and she'd never get close to it again. Something inside her refused to let that happen. This machine was broken, alone, and she had a feeling it had been waiting for someone. Maybe even her .it took hours of work, chaining together makeshift lifting arms, repurposed mining bots, and raw willpower. But by nightfall, Lena had hauled the head and torso of the Sentinel onto her flatbed. Sparks danced across its surface as she connected power feeds and diagnostic scanners. Most of the readings were unreadable symbols and energy levels beyond anything human tech could explain, but she didn't stop. She kept going, adjusting, rewiring, patching broken conduits like she'd done 1,000 times with old Martian transports. But this time was different. Every step seemed guided by instinct she didn't know she had, like the machine itself was whispering directions. Finally, just after midnight, the pulse inside the core spiked. Her tools sparked, lights blinked off, and a deep vibration shook the ground beneath her feet. The Sentinel's eyes, if that's what they were, lit up with a bright golden light. Lena stumbled back, shielding her face as a low, echoing voice filled the air. It wasn't coming from speakers. It was inside her mind, clear and powerful. Command link established. Identity confirmed. Designation accepted. Lena Rourke. Guardian selected. She froze. Her mouth went dry. Guardian? Selected? She was just a mechanic. She fixed broken stuff. She didn't fight wars or command alien machines. But the Sentinel had no doubt. Its chest slowly opened, revealing a platform with glowing handprints. Hesitantly, heart pounding, Lena stepped forward. As her hands touched the panel, a shock of energy surged through her body, not painful but intense, like her mind was being scanned and rewritten at the same time. Visions flashed before her eyes, stars burning, planets under attack, battles fought across galaxies by giant machines with minds of their own. She pulled her hands away, gasping. The Sentinel systems came fully online, surrounding her with soft light and alien symbols shifting into English as if the machine had already adapted to her. Then came the message, a faint signal picked up during reactivation. Coordinates of unknown origin. And one phrase translated clearly across the screen, Void Harvester. Awakening imminent. Lena didn't know what a Void Harvester was, but the way the Sentinel reacted, shields activating, systems cycling up, emergency protocols triggering, told her everything she needed. It was dangerous. It was coming. And this Guardian, whoever or whatever it had been waiting for, had just chosen her to stop it. Lena sat down heavily on a nearby crate, staring up at the towering machine now fully awake beside her. Her heart was still racing. The Martian wind had picked up again, howling outside the garage. She thought back to her old life, grease-stained hands, broken engines, long days alone fixing machines that didn't care who she was. But this machine did care. It had chosen her. She didn't know why or how, or even what being a Guardian truly meant, but one thing was clear: her quiet days were over. Something ancient had awakened. Something dangerous. And it had started with a broken machine, and a human mechanic who refused to walk away. The morning on Mars came slowly, its pale sun rising over the rust-colored hills like a weak firelight behind dusty glass. Lena Rourke hadn't slept. She sat cross-legged on the floor of her workshop, her eyes fixed on the towering machine before her. The Sentinel HFY 9, as it now identified itself, stood silent but alive, its golden eyes dimmed into a steady, waiting glow. The words still rang in Lena's head, Guardian selected. She couldn't wrap her mind around it. She was no soldier, no hero. Just a mechanic who followed her instincts and fixed things no one else would touch. And now, she was connected to an ancient alien war machine built to defend entire planets. She tried to understand what had just happened, but nothing made sense. She had no training in alien tech, yet somehow, when her hands touched that control panel, she had known what to do. It was like the machine had given her a new kind of knowledge, silently, instantly, without asking. Her fingers still tingled from the surge of energy. It didn't hurt. It felt more like awakening. As if something had been sleeping inside her too, and now it was rising, stretching, remembering. While the rest of the colony slept, unaware, Lena ran diagnostics again. The screen flashed in both alien symbols and translated English. Systems, functional. Core sync, 78%. Pilot compatibility, confirmed. Threat response, pending. Then came the transmission still repeating from last night. The unknown coordinates and the chilling phrase, Void Harvester, awakening imminent. Lena stared at the data, heart sinking. She didn't know what a Void Harvester was, but the urgency in the Sentinel systems told her enough. It was no myth, no small threat. Something ancient and powerful had begun to stir, and this machine had reactivated to stop it. But why her? She had no answer, only a creeping sense that whatever was coming was much bigger than she could handle alone. Suddenly, HFY 9's head turned. The sound was low and smooth, metal moving with purpose. Lena jumped, startled. "Aegis?" she said, unsure if speaking to it like a person made sense, but the machine responded immediately. "Pilot Rourke," the deep voice echoed, emotionless but steady. "Awakening protocol initiated. Threat proximity, rising. Combat readiness required." She frowned, rubbing the back of her neck. "Look, I don't know what kind of Guardian you were waiting for, but I'm not a fighter. I fix things. That's it." The machine paused for a long moment, as if processing her words. "Then, defenders are forged, not born. The link is made. You will adapt." Lena's breath caught in her throat. Somewhere deep inside, she believed it. Not because of pride, but because she felt the weight of something ancient now settled on her shoulders. Before she could reply, alarms blared from her external sensors. Her garage scanners lit up with movement, unidentified aerial units approaching fast. She rushed to the console. The display showed 5 sleek objects diving through the upper Martian atmosphere. No markings, no IFF signatures. They weren't colony drones. And they weren't friendly. HFY 9 systems responded on their own, armor plating shifting, weapon nodes sliding into position with soft clicks. Pursuit drones detected, Aegis said. Signal traces confirm they are drawn by Guardian activation. Hostile intent, likely. Lena's fingers flew over the controls. Her old workshop had defense walls, but they were made to stop sandstorms, not alien drones. She looked up at Aegis, now glowing from head to foot. "We can fight them, right?" she asked, trying to keep the fear out of her voice. "Engaging threat," Aegis replied. "Brace for interface." Before she could ask what that meant, the cockpit opened again. The light inside pulsed softly, inviting her in. Heart pounding, she climbed onto the platform and placed her hands on the console. Instantly, the world shifted. It wasn't just lights and sounds anymore. It was sensation. She could feel the wind outside, sense the drone movements, the friction of the Sentinel's massive feet on Martian rock. The connection was deeper now. She wasn't just piloting the machine, she was the machine. When the first drone appeared, streaking across the sky like a burning arrow, Lena didn't hesitate. Her body moved, and Aegis moved with her. A shield unfolded from its forearm, catching the blast and sending sparks flying. Then came the return shot, an energy beam that sliced the drone from the sky in a single, precise strike. 3 more came in fast, circling like vultures. Lena gritted her teeth, leaning forward as her instincts guided the Sentinel through combat. Her heart raced, adrenaline surging, but she wasn't overwhelmed. She was in control. Her years of fixing broken systems gave her a strange edge. She understood moving parts, timing, pressure. And now, she used that to outmaneuver machines built for destruction. A second drone crashed to the ground in a fiery spiral. The third was caught mid-air by a kinetic snare and crushed. Only one remained, circling higher, scanning, calculating. But before it could flee, Aegis leapt an impossible, weightless bound and brought it down with a final thunderous blow. Silence returned. The air was thick with smoke and dust, and the wreckage of alien tech lay scattered across the Martian soil. Lena stumbled out of the cockpit, trembling, her breath ragged but victorious. She looked up at Aegis 9, now standing calmly once more, the glow in its chest slowly fading. "What? What were those things?" she asked. Aegis responded in its steady voice. "Harbinger probes. Precursor scouts deployed by the Void Harvesters. Their arrival confirms threat proximity. Full activation sequence required." Lena rubbed her temples. This was happening too fast. She wanted to believe it was a dream, but the ruined drones told her otherwise. Something terrible had detected the Guardian's return. And now the hunt had begun. That night, Lena packed what little she could. Her shop, her tools, her home. She couldn't stay. The battle had left a signal trail, and more enemies would follow. Aegis uploaded new coordinates into her system, an ancient vault hidden deep in the Martian canyons, containing the next key to unlocking the Sentinel's full power. She didn't know what she would find there, or what would come after that. She was scared, yes, but she wasn't running away. The sun dipped behind the Martian horizon, and the first stars blinked into view. Lena climbed back into the cockpit. The platform closed around her, warm with energy, steady with purpose. Aegis spoke only once as they began to move. "You are the Guardian now." And with that, they vanished into the night, leaving behind only wind, dust, and the broken remains of what had dared to stop them. The Martian wind howled through the narrow canyons as Lena Rourke guided Aegis 9 through the deep red maze, shadows stretching long under the fading light of a dying sun. For hours, they had moved without stopping, the alien Sentinel stepping with silent precision, its massive feet barely disturbing the dust beneath. Inside the cockpit, Lena sat alert, her mind still buzzing from the battle that had changed everything. The drones weren't just machines, they were a warning. Something greater was awake now, watching, reaching across space like a shadow growing longer. She had never believed in destiny or fate, but ever since she touched the Sentinel's core, her life had twisted into a path she could no longer escape. Now she was a mechanic, no more. She was a guardian chosen by something older than human memory, and that truth carried a weight she hadn't yet learned how to carry. Ahead, the canyon widened into a vast open crater hidden from satellite scans, and nestled within its heart stood a structure unlike any human design. It rose from the ground like an open flower of metal and stone, glowing softly with lines of alien script. This was the Vault of Echoes, a forgotten Xanthian outpost said to contain lost technology and encrypted memories of those who came before. Aegis 9 slowed as it approached, speaking in a quiet tone that always sent a chill through Lena's bones. This is where the next stage begins. Within lies the legacy core. Without it, I cannot reach full capacity. And without full capacity, the harvester cannot be stopped. She nodded slowly, fingers tightening on the control panel. Then let's get it. The entrance opened like a living thing, metal petals unfolding with a sound like breathing rock, and Lena stepped out into the darkness beyond, flashlight flickering as she moved cautiously down the sloping passage. The air inside was colder, denser, filled with a strange static that prickled her skin. She saw old symbols glowing along the walls, Xanthian language that Aegis translated in real time through the implant now laced with her nervous system. Messages of war, of sacrifice, of guardians who had fallen long ago protecting worlds no longer on any map. And then, deeper inside, she found it. As she stepped closer, something surged through her, not pain, but memory. Flashes of battles, giant machines locked in combat. She fell to her knees, overwhelmed by the flood of foreign images now merging with her own thoughts. Aegis 9's voice echoed in her ear, calm but urgent. The core is transferring its legacy. You are becoming more than human now. You are part of the chain. When it ended, she stood up slowly, dizzy but changed. The world felt sharper. Her senses stretched beyond her body. She could feel vibrations in the walls, heat patterns in the stone, even the distant hum of a ship flying far above the surface. But that was when she realized they were no longer alone. A warning flashed through her vision, enemy signal approaching fast. Lena ran back to the surface where Aegis 9 was already activating defensive systems. From the sky, sleek black ships descended like birds of prey, marked not with alien glyphs, but with a familiar symbol, Ecliptica Corps, the largest Earth-based tech corporation. They had found her. Somehow, they had tracked the Sentinel's reactivation and followed its energy signature to the vault. A voice came through the open comms, smooth and corporate, yet cold enough to send shivers down her spine. Lena Rourke. By order of Ecliptica Corps, you are in possession of unauthorized Xanthian technology. Surrender the Guardian and stand down. Resistance will be met with force. She stared at the hovering gunships above, her jaw tightening. Not a chance, she whispered, then locked back into the cockpit. The battle that followed was nothing like the drone skirmish on Mars. These attackers were human-piloted, armed with advanced weaponry designed specifically to capture or disable alien tech. They moved in coordinated formations, launching EMP spikes, magnetic anchors, and burst torpedoes, trying to bring Aegis 9 down without destroying it. Lena had no military training, but the Sentinel's combat AI guided her reflexes, blending her instincts with ancient tactics burned into the machine's mind. She dodged between blasts, used the terrain to her advantage, and struck back with precision, aiming not to kill, but to disable. Still, the assault was intense, and for every fighter she downed, another took its place. Then, from the largest ship, a new figure dropped, massive, armored, glowing with red energy. It was another Sentinel. But this one was wrong. Its movements were too stiff, its aura unnatural. Aegis whispered urgently, that is not a Guardian. It is a mimic. A false creation. Ecliptica had built their own version, Hellion Prime, a hybrid built from stolen tech, bonded not by legacy, but by force. The two giants clashed in a storm of light and metal, fists striking like thunder, energy blades lighting up the night sky. Lena gritted her teeth, trying to keep up. Hellion was strong, faster than she expected, but hollow. There was no soul behind its attacks, no connection between pilot and machine, just programming and control. Still, it was powerful, and Aegis began to take damage. Systems flickered. Armor cracked. Lena's mind screamed with the feedback, but she didn't give in. In a final, desperate move, she let go of fear, trusted her instincts, and overrode the combat protocol with her own commands. She redirected the fusion coils to blast outward at close range, creating a burst of energy that shattered Hellion's arm and threw the false guardian back into the cliffside. The ground shook as silence returned, and the remaining ships pulled away, recalling their broken champion. Ecliptica wasn't finished, but they had underestimated her. For now, she had survived. Lena climbed out of the cockpit, exhausted, bleeding from her temple, but still standing. Her eyes drifted to the sky where stars now shimmered cold and distant. HFY 9 stood behind her, humming softly, damaged but alive. "They will come again," it said. "And stronger." She nodded, brushing dirt from her jacket. "Let them. I'll be ready." Somewhere far beyond the Martian sky, something vast was moving, a dark wave that consumed light and sound. The Void Harvesters were not stories. They were real. And the fact that Ecliptica was moving now meant they knew it, too. A war was coming not just for control of alien tech, but for the future of humanity itself. And in the heart of that storm stood a mechanic who never asked to be a hero, yet had become the last hope between life and oblivion. The journey to the Forge of Judgment began in silence, the kind of silence that settles after a battle not fully won. Lena Rourke sat inside the cockpit of HFY 9, her hands still trembling from the clash with the mimic sentinel known as Hellion Prime. The scars from that fight were fresh, not just on the machine's cracked armor, but inside her mind where flashes of rage, fear, and instinct still echoed. The core they had recovered from the Vault of Echoes had unlocked more than just raw power. It had awakened deeper memories, not hers, but stored fragments of ancient guardians who had lived and died protecting others. She felt their voices sometimes guiding, watching, waiting. And now they whispered only one destination, the Forge of Judgment, a place lost even to history, hidden beneath the surface of the Martian moon Phobos. According to HFY 9, it was the only place left in the system where a true guardian could be tested, reshaped, and reforged for the final battle. As the ship they had seized from Ecliptica's retreating fleet entered orbit, Lena stared through the viewport at the jagged moon ahead, knowing that the next time she returned to Mars, she would not be the same. Aegis stood silent in the cargo hold below, its systems recharging, its core pulsing slowly with a deep blue light. But even in rest, the Sentinel remained alert, watching her, trusting her, preparing for what came next. Landing was rough. The automated systems on Phobos had been offline for centuries, and the forge entrance was sealed under layers of debris and collapsed rock. Lena had to climb out with her tools again, scraping, cutting, rebuilding access panels until a faint hum returned, and the earth beneath her feet rumbled open to reveal a spiral shaft leading down into darkness. As she descended, a soft light greeted her, pale white and ancient, glowing from lines etched into the metal walls like veins carrying the lifeblood of the forgotten. Aegis followed her down, moving slowly, as if even it held respect for what lay ahead. "This place," Aegis said at last, "was where my creators tested resolve. Not every guardian was worthy. Those who failed were left behind, entombed in silence." Lena felt her chest tighten. "What happens if I fail?" she asked, but Aegis did not answer. They reached a great hall at the bottom, circular and wide, with strange machines and floating platforms suspended above glowing pools of energy. At the center, a single spire rose from the floor, topped by a crystalline core that seemed to breathe with light. A voice, not Aegis, but something older, spoke from nowhere and everywhere at once. "Pilot Lena Rourke. Mechanic. Human. Chosen. You have crossed the line between the known and the forgotten. If you seek the final bond, step forward and be judged." The moment she placed her hand on the spire, everything changed. Her vision blurred, her body felt weightless, and suddenly she stood not in the forge, but in a memory, no, a trial. The landscape around her was scorched and broken, the sky cracked with strange lightning. She was alone, yet not. Shadows moved across the battlefield, flickering forms of guardians past, whispering doubts and truths. A figure stepped forward, her own face twisted by fear and hesitation. "You think fixing things makes you worthy?" It spat. "You were never meant to carry this. You're just a girl from a junkyard." Then another shape emerged, her father, long dead, his hands covered in grease, his eyes tired. "You ran when things got hard, Lena, just like you always do." She fell to her knees, the voices hammering into her head. Pain was not physical here. It was inside her, tearing at her will. The trial was not about strength. It was about purpose. About standing when every part of her wanted to turn away. Gritting her teeth, Lena stood up. "I'm not perfect," she said aloud. "I didn't ask for this. But I'm here. I stayed. And I'll keep staying, no matter how broken I am." The shadows paused, flickered, and then faded, replaced by a blinding light. When she opened her eyes, she was back in the forge. The spire had gone dark, but something had changed. Inside her chest, a warmth spread steady and sure. A new energy. A new bond. Behind her, Aegis 9 knelt, armor folding open, cockpit exposed. The core within glowed brighter now, and the sentinel spoke with a tone she had never heard before, less machine, more alive. "The forge accepts you." Judgment passed. Sync level complete. She stepped inside, and as the cockpit sealed around her, she felt a power rise through her bones. The armor adapted, reshaped itself, not just around her, but with her. She could feel the metal breathing, the circuits listening. She was no longer a pilot inside a machine, she and Aegis were one. Systems activated around her like living nerves. New weapons, defense fields, and ancient tech she had no name for. Her vision expanded beyond the hull, into the sky, into orbit. She saw ships moving. Not eclipticas, this time something worse. The Void Harvester's scouts had entered the solar system. Not drones. Not copies. Real ones. The same things that had destroyed entire civilizations, now moving toward Mars like a storm swallowing the stars. HFY showed her a projection, 7 days before impact. Less than a week to prepare. And somewhere out there, the rest of the Guardians, if they even still existed, remained silent. If they were gone, it was her alone. But not entirely alone. As she climbed back aboard the stolen transport and set course for Mars, Lena picked up a faint signal encrypted, old, bouncing off deep space relays. She decrypted it using protocols freshly uploaded from the forge. The voice was cracked and full of static, but it was real. "This is Valk 3. Sentinel class. Unknown Guardian detected. Signal confirmed. If you are real, meet me at the grave orbit. Time is short." Lena didn't know who Valk 3 was, or if it was a trap, but she didn't hesitate. She was no longer the girl fixing broken panels on a dusty outpost. She was the fire waiting in the dark. She had passed the trial, and the war was only beginning. The stars above Mars were no longer silent. In every direction beyond the thin Martian atmosphere, warships and shadows moved like restless beasts, and Lena Rourke could feel them each pulse, each distortion in space, as clearly as she could feel her own heartbeat. Sitting inside Aegis 9, fully bonded, she was no longer just a human pilot, no longer just a mechanic who once lived in the dusty scrapyards of New Europa. She had become something more: guardian, defender, the bridge between a forgotten alien legacy and a fragile human future. And now, as the final battle approached, she stood as the only thing between two worlds and the hunger of the Void Harvesters. The signal from Valk 3 had led her to grave orbit, a massive debris field circling a shattered moon once known as Kiros. Long ago, it had been a weapons platform built by the Xanthians, destroyed in their final stand against the Harvester fleet. Now broken hulls, shattered sentinels, and frozen bodies drifted endlessly in silence, a graveyard of lost hope. But amidst the wreckage floated a single living light, Valk 3. It was old, scorched, its frame patched together from multiple generations of Guardian tech, but it moved with power and purpose. As Lena's ship approached, the battered machine turned and spoke in a voice of metal and time. "So it's true. One Guardian still answers the call. Lena stepped forward, her voice steady despite the growing weight in her chest. I didn't choose this. But I'm not walking away. Valk 3 studied her, sensors glowing faintly. You've been to the forge. That bond can't be fake. Then you understand what's coming. The harvesters are not just machines. They feed on life, memory, history. When they arrive, they won't just burn cities, they'll erase what it means to be human. She nodded. Then we don't let them. Together, they began preparing for what little time remained. Mars had no formal defense fleet. Earth's governments were locked in bureaucracy, and Ecliptica Corps had retreated into silence after Hellion Prime's failure. Humanity didn't believe in the legends. They saw alien tech as tools, not warnings. So it fell to Lena and Valk 3 to turn myth into reality. For 3 days, they scouted, repaired, and reactivated what they could. Deep beneath Olympus Mons, Lena found a buried Xanthian vault with dormant energy cannons designed to fire across space. On Phobos, Valk 3 unearthed a partial star map showing potential weak points in the approaching Harvester formation. The plan was simple: divide, delay, disrupt. They couldn't defeat the entire swarm alone, but maybe, just maybe, they could buy Earth and Mars enough time to unite. Then came the storm. It began as a flicker, a small tear in space near Jupiter's edge, like a wound slowly ripping open. From it spilled the Harvester fleet, black ships shaped like broken wings, feeding on light itself. Each moved with terrifying silence, impossible to track with human sensors. Their weapons were gravitational pulses, shredding entire colonies without a sound. Valk 3 sent the first warning. They'd begun consuming Callisto. We have 1 hour before they reach Mars. Lena's fingers flew across the controls. Then we meet them halfway. Aegis 9 launched from the base with Valk 3 at its side, both streaking into orbit as the Martian sky turned red with panic. Evacuation alarms screamed. Civilian transports scrambled to break atmosphere. But above them, the Guardians soared. For the first time in human history, 2 worlds had sent champions not to run but to fight. The first wave hit hard. Harvester scouts moved like shadows, their hulls absorbing energy blasts, their movements strange, almost fluid. Lena dodged, countered, used every weapon Aegis had unlocked. She fought not just with tech, but with instinct. She felt when a blast was coming, felt the gaps in enemy armor before she even saw them. Valk 3 covered her flank, its massive blades slicing through drones like paper, though its old frame groaned with every strike. As the minutes passed, more harvesters arrived. The sky filled with them. The Guardians were outnumbered, outgunned, but not outwilled. Then, just as the battle seemed lost, a ripple moved through the battlefield, an energy surge from behind Mars. Lena turned and gasped. Ships. Hundreds of them. Civilian crafts, mining rigs, even old freighters armed and flying in formation. Humanity had answered. Ecliptica's tech crews, rebel engineers, Martian colonists, they had come, not as soldiers, but as defenders. Inspired by Lena's stand, they had turned their machines into weapons. They joined the battle with courage, firing in unison, protecting evac ships, forcing the harvesters to retreat inch by inch. And through it all, Lena kept fighting. Every movement with Aegis was like breathing. Her body and the machine danced through fire and darkness. She saw a harvester drone moving toward a Martian shuttle and fired a pulse that tore through its core, then spun to block a blast aimed at Valk 3. But then something hit her, a deep, cold pain inside her chest. A spike of energy, not physical, but mental. A harvester had locked onto her mind. She screamed, falling inside the cockpit as memories flashed her father's face, her first broken engine, her fear of being forgotten. The harvester wasn't just attacking, it was trying to consume her past. Aegis pushed back, its core flaring with blue fire. You are not alone, it said. We fight together. With one final surge, Lena activated the last core protocol, the Pulse of Judgment. Energy exploded from Aegis 9, tearing through the harvester's grip, burning through a dozen enemy ships. Valk 3 added its strength, and together they turned the tide. The harvesters began to retreat, their core vessels damaged, their control signal disrupted. The battle was not over, but it was no longer one-sided. Mars was alive. Earth was watching. The Guardians had reminded them of something long-forgotten hope. When the dust settled and silence returned, Lena floated above the red planet, her breathing slow, her body bruised but unbroken. Valk 3 hovered nearby, armor cracked but core intact. "We did it," Lena whispered. Aegis responded with quiet strength. "For now." She looked toward Earth, a small blue gem in the distance, and knew the war wasn't finished. More harvesters would come. More darkness would rise. But humanity would no longer face it alone. They had seen the light. They had found their guardian. And she would stand between them and the void, for as long as her heart still beat.